Well, hey, welcome back to Country Fried Rock. We dug out a couple of old hard drives, found some of these old episodes from 2009 through 2020, and figured, what the hell, y'all should hear them. Ton of fantastic musicians and bands, many of whom are still out there making great music. I decided to just throw some of these old episodes back out there. They have not been re-edited, so half these places don't even exist anymore. Never mind the URLs, don't even bother. But a lot of these bands really made great music, and I want you to hear it. Dig them up on your favorite streaming service if you can't find them elsewhere, and go see a show if they're still playing. So if you're new to Country Fried Rock, starting back in 2009, this was a syndicated radio show that aired in more than 50 markets across the globe. The structure follows some of the format of older syndicated radio programs, and we left it that way. So we'll bounce around back into the archives and let us know if there's anybody in particular you'd like us to try to dig up off these extremely disorganized hard drives. No matter what, we sure appreciate you being here. You can toss some money in the tip jar, or what the hell, join the fan club. But it's most important that you check out this music. It's all there for you these days on countryfriedrock.com and your favorite podcast app. Tell a friend, smash that follow button, and give us a 5-star rating and review. That hasn't changed, no matter how much my hair color and eyeglasses have. Thanks for being here. Danny Barnes joins us again this week on Country Fried Rock. The upstart banjo player just won the Steve Martin Prize for Excellence in Banjo and Bluegrass. While Barnes is often known for playing with other bands, his own work ranges from experimental electronic folk music, yes, you heard that right, through funky rock with a banjo, all the way through to noise music and a traditional bluegrass record on the way. There's a whole lot going on this year with Danny Barnes on Country Fried Rock. And I'm your host, Sloane Spencer. My guest today on Country Fried Rock is Danny Barnes, a Country Fried Rock alum from several years ago following his record Pizza Box, but boy, has a lot happened since. Welcome.
Hey, Sloane, how are you guys doing?
Doing great. What an amazing, incredible year for you.
Yeah, I've been kind of busy, kind of wacky.
I first read about the Steve Martin Prize with the Excellence in Banjo and Bluegrass, and I thought, what an amazing thing. And that was the first that I had heard about it.
Yeah, he's a pretty smart fella, and he's kind of figured out a way of, I don't know, it's pretty invigorating for artists, you know, to get a little bit of help and a little recognition. If you kind of give someone that's a creative person a little bit of help, they tend to do interesting things with it and stuff. And he's a real fan of banjo. He just likes banjos and banjo music, and I don't know, seems to be pretty obsessed with it and stuff, and so him and I have a lot in common in that regard, I guess. But I think what he's doing is pretty smart, and it's really interesting that he would do that. And the people that have won have been really different kinds of players, and then the folks he has on the board represent a lot of different kinds of players too, like J.D. Crow's one of the guys, and all different people and stuff. It's real interesting, but I don't know. I just think he's a super smart man, and he's really figured out a way to give back in a pretty powerful way, you know. So I know my hat's off to him, you know.
It's incredible, and the prize also comes with some significant financial support. And what is that allowing you to do?
Well, a lot of things. One is I've just got a lot of music that I've written that I haven't really been able to sort of commit to either tape or paper because I have to work really hard, and I do, 120 days a year, whatever, touring. So I'm out a lot, and I have to work really hard. And I put out a lot of recordings, and I work really hard because I'm pretty far underground. And so I have some projects that I've sort of haven't really been able to finish because I've been working really hard on just trying to, just keeping my business going and stuff. And so that kind of gives me a little breathing room on that. One of them is I've never really done a straight-up banjo record.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to some people about doing that, and I'm excited about, going to Nashville and getting some kind of straight-up A-team bluegrass player guys and just do just a straight-up banjo record, because, left to my own devices, I tend to blend, American music with, 20th century art or whatever, like composed music and noise music and things like that is what I'm interested in, and so I've never really made just a straight-up banjo record, but I've been working on that stuff since 1971, which is 43 years or whatever. So I've been working on it a long time, but I've never put any of that out.
Right.
So I've been working on getting that done, and I have several different things I'm working on. One is I have this suite of music it's serial music or 12-tone music for banjo and tuba. It's like the most maligned instruments in the history of the world. It has the most jokes about them, but some like heavy music for those two instruments, which I thought would be kind of an interesting juxtaposition. And
cool.
And I've been working on that. I have a couple pieces done, but I need a little bit of time, to finish it and record it and everything. And it's going to help me do that this winter, and I'm excited about that. And just things like that. I don't really know. My response to everything is just make stuff. So I don't know. It's like if I don't really have a plan B. It's just whatever happens, I just make something. I don't know, in response or whatever, as an answer to or to ask a question or whatever. I just tend to make something. So I don't really know what else to do. I'm like just a valve. It just only does one thing or something.
Hey, y'all, this is Sloane Spencer, the host of Country Fried Rock. We've had an incredible year with more people finding us on the radio and our podcast than we ever imagined. Thank you all so much. Careful what you wish for. You just might get it.
Hey, this is Danny Barnes, and I'm on Country Fried Rock.
Well, I've followed you on social media for a long time and seen you play live many, many times. You do a lot of different things that I'm fascinated by. So you also have these cassettes that you hand do the covers for, but then I think there's maybe more an official approach to some of these cassette releases now.
Sometimes I have them made, depending on what I do. And I put out some cassettes on other artists, too. I have this little label that I run called Minner Bucket Records, which is MINNER, Minner Bucket Records. And we have a bunch of stuff on our site that listeners can just stream for free and listen. But I put out tapes on some other people that I like, friends of mine, and stuff that I think is interesting and needs to be heard. And I put out tapes of my own music. And sometimes if I'm going to do, this one tape that I made called Barnyard Electronics, which is kind of it's like the basic sort of palette of my aesthetic, Barnyard Electronics on a cassette. And I have that going in perpetuity. That's not a fixed number, but sometimes I'll do tapes where I just do 100 of them signed and numbered, and they're sequentially numbered and everything, and I'll hand draw the covers and all that. In that case, if I'm going to make 100 of them or 200 of them, I'll have them duplicated. And if for this particular run, though, we were kind of up on it really close, and I kind of had to crank them out, so I just made them at home. I just dubbed them at home. I just sat in front of 2 tape decks and just dubbed them off. It took about 3 days to do it. I made 50 copies.
Wow.
And I just sat there and did them all by hand and just sat there and looked at those VU meters for about 3, 12-hour days or something. It took a long time. Plus recording it and mixing it and mastering it. I mean, that took about a week probably. But I don't know. I do these projects. I'm kind of I do our first thing we did on Minner Bucket Records was a series of CDRs, and there was only 100 made, but every one had different music on it. And all had one name called The Pathos of Smike, which is a title I got from a Charles Dickens novel, Nicholas Nickleby.
Yep.
But I had 100, and they all had hand-drawn covers. I'd take a cereal box and cut it up and draw things on it, and that would be the cover or whatever. And I made 100 of them, and they were all different. I sold them for $25 a piece, and it took a lot of work. Just a little bit of time, I had $2,500 free and clear, and it was like, whoa, man, this is pretty cool, because in music, it's really hard to get the money in the bank. It's like you can spend so much time on your press releases and social media and manufacturing product and setting up tours and talking to people and legal stuff and setting up your publishing and doing. You can easily spend 50, 60 hours a week and never actually put a penny in the bank, And that was about the year 2000 or 1999 or so. That's when it was that was way before all this stuff was really happening.
Right.
People doing self-publishing back then. That wasn't what people were thinking about, but it certainly turned on a little 40-watt appliance bulb in my head and sort of interested me because it was something that I just did it directly to my fans, and it was something that was super creative on an artistic level, and it went straight to people that were really interested in music, and it was a lot of work, though. If you can imagine 100 different records, it was a lot of work, but it was fun,
you're constantly creating on so many different levels. I guess I saw you play last live maybe a year ago, and that was the first time that I had seen the app. I don't know if app isn't the right word. You had made a program on your computer and were making noise music. I don't even know the right terms to use, but it was the first time I had seen you perform in that kind of capacity.
Nice. I had to kind of figure out like programming and building programs because I couldn't find what I wanted, so I had to make it. It was pretty good to do that because that opened up a whole new like world for me. Was learning about programming and stuff, and something I didn't really. I use computers a lot in my work, like in the office respect or whatever, and certain things, but. And for recording, my training is actually in audio stuff. I use computers obviously a lot for that, but I never really created a platform for audio manipulation, and it took about 2 years really probably to get it, where I kept tweaking it and having to play live with it and see, and then it would screw up, and I'd go home and rebuild it. It took a long time, to test it where I could, and then I got where I could play, like I did open up a show at Red Rocks for some friends of mine. There's probably 7,000 people there, but I could walk out there and do a set with my computer, and it was real solid, and I got my stability up and got it really reliable and stuff like that. And I'm rebuilding it. I'm constantly rebuilding it, and I'm starting on another version of it now, and I've kind of been tweaking on that.
Is that something that you would like to collaborate with friends on, or is that more your way of seeing?
It's kind of my thing, like I like manipulating the banjo and making these kind of soundscape things. I feel like it's like something I have to offer artistically. If you take commerce completely out of the picture and you're just talking about what does this guy do that's interesting or something, like for me, making something that wasn't there before is kind of interesting. I mean, I get known for songs and for playing the banjo and playing on people's records and things like that. I think just, my typical fan knows me more from that respect because I played on some record that they like, or maybe one of my songs or something was on a TV show they liked, or they liked this song or something like that or whatever, or one of their friends or a band that they're into plays one of my songs or whatever. But this is like something that I feel like is kind of like my own little tableau, so to speak, to create, and things. And it's really invigorating, and it's not really for everybody because it's kind of like a hybridization of various kinds of musics. But I feel like, I'm pretty driven about it, and I really like it, and it's really creative. And it's kind of cool because, like, you can bend it and morph it sort of on the spot, kind of like the way a DJ works. You can kind of bend things in the moment. And some people think of electronics as being real static kind of thing, but the way the kind of people that I'm interested in that world, and the way that I kind of set up my program is where you can bend it and morph it and make other things out of it. Like I can sort of play and grab anything that I'm doing. I can grab it. I can pitch shift it way down and make kind of a bass line out of it, or I can make it go really high and play it backwards to make sort of like a string pad thing almost, and I can turn on reverbs and delays and compressors and distortions, and then I have different kinds of samples I can play and things, and it's just kind of a fun thing, like it's kind of a laboratory deal, but I feel like it's important because it's like if you look at Bill Monroe, say, a lot of times when musicians are inspired by Bill Monroe or something, they want to go get a tie like that, they want to get a hat like that, or learn some of those songs and don't use drums, and do this thing kind of like that. But that's not really, like the Sufis have this thing, like don't copy someone's altruism, copy what makes them do altruistic things or something like that, And so Monroe, in context, embraced technology. And that's something people don't think about that now, but if you go back in time, he mastered the art of radio and recordings, which a lot of his contemporaries, or some of his contemporaries, were very suspicious of that, and they didn't want to be recorded. A perfect example is Ed Haley, and you've probably heard about John Hartford talking about Ed Haley, who was a great fiddler, but there's very little recordings of him because he didn't want to be recorded because he wanted you to pay him to come play, and so he makes a really valid point. In hindsight, the guy's like Nostradamus or something. But anyway, so I've talked to John Hartford about that too. Like in copying Bill Monroe, if you really wanted to copy Bill Monroe, you have to go make your own style of music.
Hey, y'all, this is Sloane Spencer, the host of Country Fried Rock. Those of y'all who listen on our podcasts, it's a quick hit of just the conversation. If you want the full radio program with all the songs that we talk about, ask for it on your local radio station, joining 20 other stations across the country. Get the goods at countryfriedrock.org.
Hey, this is Danny Barnes, and I got a bunch of new music out. You can go to my website at www.minnerbucket.records, which is MINNER. And I got a new cassette called The Barnyard Space Program. There's only 50 copies made. And I got a brand new record coming out, a brand new CD coming out on Black Friday called Got Myself Together. Thank you.
It's kind of a punk rock view of things.
Absolutely. Because when punk rock first exploded, it was very informed by art. I was really into that band Richard Hell and the Voidoids. And you can tell by his poetry that he had read Rimbaud, how do you say that guy's name? Baudelaire, and those kind of existential kind of things, and like some of the maybe like Jean-Paul Sartre and certain kinds of like post-structuralism kind of things or whatever had popped up sort of thematically in what he was talking about. And a lot of those guys, like The Clash, and a lot of those guys were really well informed on like contemporary art, cut and paste, and things like that. And it's interesting that a lot of that type of contemporary art, like Stravinsky and like Man Ray and Gertrude Stein and, those kind of characters, they were kind of born about the same time as bluegrass.
Which is kind of crazy.
It's kind of interesting to me, like that all kind of came out of that same time in a way. Like, it's really interesting, kind of like that post-World War I kind of explosion of stuff. And I always found that to be interesting. Like, electronic music and bluegrass music are sort of contemporaneous, A lot of the orchestrations that, like, technically that Monroe was using and things, and Chuck Berry, too, sort of came from big band in a way. Like, some of their things was kind of reminiscent of, like, big band stuff, sort of, to me. Like the horn parts and the chop parts and sometimes the walking bass and various things like that sort of reminded me of these larger ensembles that you might have heard on the radio. The way things would switch off, like one-person solos, and like it's like an old-time fiddle music, like people kind of all play at the same time, for instance. But if you listen to Chuck Berry, like, to me, a lot of his chordal movements, especially those block chords, are almost like the horn parts of like Benny Goodman records and stuff. And so it's like the technology using a mandolin and a banjo and a fiddle and a bass, just using 4 or 5 guys and recorded through an RCA 77 ribbon mic with an Ampex tube compressor going to a 1-inch mono tape. The technology of that allowed them to sort of sound like a huge orchestra. So it's like it gave someone who wasn't quite maybe like economically as advantaged as, it would take a lot of dough to get the Benny Goodman Orchestra to come play, and it would give someone who just had, like a little bit more limited deal, the access to that same power sonically. And I think that's kind of like what electronics approach does to someone like me, is it gives me a lot of power as one person, because I can build these giant things. It gives a smaller group a lot of power, a smaller person a lot of power, Like, for instance, this is a silly, super elemental example, but I can go on old records and find a bass drum hit all by itself. It's like a perfect bass drum hit that's like a really cool old kit, a really great musician that tuned it perfectly, recorded with all this vintage gear, perfectly compressed and limited and EQ'd, and it goes to record, which sounds awesome. And then I can grab that hit and use it as a bass drum in a piece via sampling. And if I write something for a drummer and I go into a studio, a good studio is going to cost me about $800. The drummer himself is going to cost $400 or $500. It's going to take about 4 to 5 hours to get it mic'd up right. So, and I haven't even made anything. I ain't even got one thing yet, and I'm already down, $1,400, and we haven't even got a sound yet. And like that way, it allows me to work really fast, and allows me to, in terms of like the open source kind of model, it allows me to take things and make other things out of them, kind of like a Creative Commons kind of approach or whatever. It allows me to build things out of other things. And I suppose it's a bit like the bricolage technique, which it means bricklayer, but it's like, I don't really do much rock work, but like you have to use the materials at hand, and you have to like work with what you have, Like when you get to the job site, maybe there's a tree there, and that fence is going to have to kind of go around that or whatever. Yeah. You got to work with what you got, and you have limited things, but you use the materials at hand to complete the job. And so, I don't know, it's like there's a lot to it there. And I get a lot of inspiration from like just contemporary art and the way a lot of those guys were able to make things and stuff like that. It just kind of inspires me to find my own power, even though I'm just one person, and I'm a small person, and I'm kind of an underground artist, I'm like a subgenre of a subgenre, so I'm like way down there, So I have to really, any chance I get to do kind of an end run around something and have a little bit of power, I really got to make sure that I seize it, and make full use of it. So that's just kind of like what electronics allows me to do. And like building programs, you get to boss the computer around, instead of like get a DAW which is a digital audio workstation, like you get like Pro Tools, for example. You get a copy of Pro Tools, it's going to set you back, the computer and interface and everything to run a Pro Tools rig. If you get it all new, it's going to cost you a couple of $grand or whatever, maybe more, a little less maybe. You get it used less, of course. It'd be a lot cheaper to use a Linux computer and use a Arter or one of the open source DAWs would be a lot cheaper. I really think that open source stuff is like the wave of the future, whether you like it or not, But anyway, but like, you have to kind of work with what it'll have a workflow that it wants to really impose on what you're doing. You have to kind of learn. You ever notice that with a software, you kind of got to figure out, for me anyway, you got to figure out what they're wanting you to do with the data.
Totally.
It's not really in the manual. You kind of just got to figure it out. Like if you're trying to learn how to use Photoshop or Excel or something, like you just got to figure out what they're wanting you to do with the data. Like with building things, I use this platform called Max MSP, which is it's open source in that these real smart people put up these modules and you can download them and then crack them open and take bits that you like or change it or whatever. You have to buy into the platform, like the language itself, the little platform is like, I think about $500 to get it, but then you can just make anything you want. And then it's open source in that you can get into things, like a copy of Word, you can't crack it open and mess with the code.
Right.
You got to use it kind of as it is. Some of that stuff is like slot cars, you kind of got to go around that. So that's how you're going to go, you got to go that way, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's like set in stone. But that kind of stuff is pretty exciting from art because you can finally tell the computer what to do rather than it telling you what you got to do,
I'm your host, Sloane Spencer. You can keep in touch with us on Facebook, but I really like Twitter, where we are at Country Fried Rock, ending with ROK. And if you want to see pictures of my shoes, my dog, and my lunch, stop by Instagram. But whatever way you like to hang out, stop by and say hey.
Hey, this is Danny Barnes, and if you want to know more about my music and where I'm playing and stuff, you can look at www.dannybarnes.com.
Maybe about 10 years ago, there was Get Myself Together, but now you have the new version.
Well, we had this record. I put out this record. These real good friends of mine with a label called Terminus Records put out this record called Get Myself Together. And then they came about in a real tough time in the business. They started selling CDs at like a rough time, so they ended up closing the doors on the place. And so this record, it was really kind of like my last acoustic record, really. Like I pretty much after that, I sort of abandoned for various reasons, like acoustic stuff, and just all my records were much more experimental and electronic and rock-based or noise-based or whatever after that. And it sort of represented like my last like acoustic effort, so to speak. And I get a lot of fan mail about it, and people really like that record. It's really hard to find. Like, I think there was one on eBay that was selling for $72, like a CD. Yeah, they're out of print. You can't get them, and you can download it, I guess, but you can't get the stuff. They're hard to get, and I have a few. I'm going to keep mine. But anyways, so this record company down there, there's a producer, Lloyd Maines. I don't know if you know him or not, but Lloyd. I've been told that Lloyd uses that record to tune when he's going to mix an acoustic record. He like plays that record to listen to it, Cause
that's
it's like,
amazing.
We did a really good job of getting the sounds on that record. Anyway, but you can't get it, and so this label came to me and said, "Hey, it'd be really cool is if you just redid all those as you would play them now, just redo the whole record." And so. That's not the kind of idea that I would come up with, because it's like, I don't think like that. Like, I think like, oh, well, we'll do a whole record backwards or something, is how I would think of it. Or I'll do the whole thing, I'll print it on vinyl, I'll play it over a PA and then mic the PA, and then we'll press that, like, that's the kind of stuff I come up with. We'll put all the amps in the bushes or something. But anyway, they came to me with that idea, and they were like the two people that run the label were fans of that record and wanted me to do that, and so I thought it'd be fun to do, and so I was in a situation where I had a little bit of time, and I just sat down and worked on it really hard for a couple of weeks, and mixed and mastered it, and I think we got something really cool. It's interesting because I approached them really differently, because it was just me, really. I was engineering myself and just kind of playing around my kitchen table. And plus, I've been practicing and taking lessons and studying for 10 years, so I feel like vocally and performance-wise, my playing was a lot better. So it's interesting, and it turned out really well, and I was really excited about it. And it's pretty small. It's I really am interested in minimalism, so it's pretty small. Orchestrations are small, but it turned out really well. I'm proud of it, and it comes out on Black Friday. Tour coming up in Texas, and a lot of touring next year behind that record and stuff.
Is there another record also?
I have a cassette that's coming out for Cassette Store Day called the Barnyard Space Program.
And is that more of the electronic noise
Yeah, and
stuff?
there's only 50 of those made. The handmade, I made those at home, and that comes out on Cassette Store Day. There's not very many copies of that, so if you want one, you better get them, because there's only 50. They're numbered 1 through 50. It was really fun. I like doing stuff like that. I mean, it's really like, cassettes are really funny because you immediately eliminate all the people that aren't, like, really into music,
Right.
It's like the only people that pick up a tape and look at it at a merch table are, like, total music freaks, Like, one time I played over here in Seattle, and there was a kid about 25 years old working the door. The manager of the club or the owner of the club or whatever comes over and he says, "You got anything to sell?" And I said, "Well, I have some tapes. I have these 2 tapes or whatever, and I have a 45, And he's like, "Why did you make all that or something?" And then right as he said that, the kid walks up and he goes, "You have tapes? I'll take all your tapes." It's like the kid was like, "I love tapes. I'll take all the tapes. Give me 2 or 3 copies of each tape. I'll give it to my friends." So he was like, "It's like, okay, see what I mean?" It's like, and I'm the kind of person where if I'm in a venue and there's somebody selling tapes, I'll buy it no matter what it is. If it's just like a sound, if a guy just recorded his blender going, I say, "Oh, I got to have that," Anyway.
I picked up a really nice Tascam cassette player.
Yeah, I love them. I rebuild them and fix them up and put them together again, and I'm into them. I'm really into those jam boxes. I have about 20 of them. I like those metal frame, stereo, single well, non-auto reverse cassette players.
Okay, yeah.
And they have, usually the radios on them are really good because antenna is tuned to the wattage of the receiver.
Yes.
And so the radios are really good on them. They really are good. And it's like the last actually really good AM radios that were made with those jam boxes,
Interesting.
And they're AM, FM, but they're awesome. And I love those machines, and I constantly buy them and fix them and sell them and work on them and stuff.
Cool.
They're really fun to have, What I like about it is you can be listening to a tape at home, and then I can get in my van and bring my jam box, and it sounds exactly the same. And if I go over to somebody's house, I take the machine in, and it sounds the same. Instead of having a piece of music that you play at home, and then you get in your car and you listen to it, and it's a little different. And you get in your house or whatever, and you put your headphones on, your earbuds or whatever, and it's always different. But with that thing, you can just take the machine around with you, and it's always the same. Yeah, I don't know. I think those things are pretty fun. They have like a certain kind of noise floor that I find is really flattering to music, For instance, like, if you shine a colored light on a stage, it doesn't really, you can't see it. But when you pump a little fog, then you can see it. Like a little bit of distortion or a little bit of filtering or something brings out some of the points. And so it's like, I think that noise floor of audio tape is really flattering to music, and I like listening to music like that. It's funny, too, because like tapes sound slightly different when you play it again. Tape speed is really slow, and there's like this inherent sort of wow and flutter that if you play something and you play it again, it's just a little bit different. Really compelled by that sort of thing,
I'm not savvy enough to pick up on that, but I could pick up on it when it would start to stretch over time from vigorous rewinding.
Well, it's sloughing off oxide, too, as it goes. So every time it plays, it like sloughs off some of the dust and stuff. And, it'll go over the head in a little bit different way. And it has like this inherent wow and flutter, like the thing has got this kind of cycle to the wow and flutter, which is like the inherent sort of speed differential or whatever. It's not constant. It's kind of up and down a little bit. And since that's variable, if you play it again, it does it in a little bit different place or whatever. It's hard to explain, but the speed is so slow, it's not really consistent. It's like 1 3/4 inches, I think, per second. So it's really just creeping by,
I'm going to sit and play with my cassette player tonight and see if I can hear that, because I've never thought about this before, and I can't say that I have any.
The guitar on Street Fighting Man, those acoustics, I think those are going into a cassette deck. I was told those were You know, if you listen to the guitar, it's super compressed and it's sort of distorted, but not. It's like, I think they were using like a Philips cassette deck, sort of as like a little preamp or something. Like I read that somewhere.
I don't know about that, but I'm certainly going to investigate.
If you go back and play, like, especially if you got it on vinyl, you know, that's a Beggar's Banquet or whatever.
I do.
Yeah, give that a listen. If I'm not mistaken, they ran that through a cassette deck or whatever. There's like this cool, like, kind of overall compression and stuff. It's pretty flat. It's flattering to music. I mean, that kind of stuff is flattering.
Danny Barnes, thank you so much for checking back in with us at Country Fried Rock.
No problem. Thanks for playing my records, and thanks for asking me about it.
CountryFriedRock.org. Copyright 2015. All rights reserved. Our 2015 bed music is from Drivin' and Cryin's debut album, Scarred But Smarter. Got a great band you want to hear on Country Fried Rock? The best thing to do is tweet us at Country Fried Rock. That's Country Fried, ROK. You can subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes. Just search Country Fried Rock. Country Fried Rock radio programs are distributed to public radio through the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org. Our Country Fried Rock stinger is from Steve Soto and the Twisted Hearts.
Ever he been helping us some country fried